listening to Full Circle Weekly News. These articles are compiled by Eric the Unready. I'm your host, Moss Bliss. This is episode 375, covering week 28, July 8th to 14th, 2024. We begin with a proof of concept, the ability to boot Arch Linux with the contents of the root partition placed in the Google Drive cloud storage. The idea was implemented by adding an init ramfs RAM disk image, launched by the kernel at an early boot stage to mount the file system, and the Fuse module providing access to Google Drive content in the form of a virtual file system. The Fuse-based virtual file system is used to host the root partition on the Arch Linux system environment to create the necessary init ramfs stuffing, which, among other things, should set up a network connection to access Google Drive. The toolkit used was Dracut through the use of the Fuse module S3FS. The method can also be applied to cloud storage that supports Amazon S API 3. A change has been made to GNOME settings to set the interface to use the default Inter font, a font specifically designed for use in user interfaces and optimized for high clarity and small to medium-sized characters when displayed on computer screens. The change may be reverted if testing is found to be unsuccessful before the fall release of GNOME 47. In the default mode, the Inter font has problems such as the same display of the uppercase letter I and lowercase l, as well as the letter O and the number 0. This problem is successfully solved by setting the optional mode SSO2 in the Font Feature Settings property supported in GTK. The reason for replacing the old Cantarell font used in GNOME since 2010 is stagnation and maintenance problems, especially noticeable against the backdrop of the active development of the Inter font, where a large community has formed around it, continuing the development of the font, eliminating shortcomings, implementing new font features, and testing display quality for different languages and screen types. To test the new font on existing GNOME installations, you need to download and unzip the Interfont zip archive, double-click the intervariable.ttf and intervarial-italic.ttf files in the GNOME Fonts application, and then activate it as an interface font in the GNOME Tweaks application or through the G-Settings utility. GDB Debugger 15.1 was released. GDB supports source-level debugging for a wide range of programming languages on various hardware and software platforms. Box 64 0.3.0 emulator is out, designed to run Linux programs compiled for the x86-64 architecture on hardware with ARM64, RISC-V, and Long Arch 64 processors. The project pays great attention to launching of gaming applications and provides the ability to launch Windows builds through Wine and Proton. The source code for the project is written in C and distributed under the MIT license. A special feature of the project is the use of a hybrid execution model, where emulation is applied only to the machine code of the application itself and specific libraries. Typical system libraries include libc, libm, GTK, SDL, Vulkan, and OpenGL are replaced to variants native to the target platforms. This way, library calls are performed without emulation, resulting in significant performance gains. Emulation of code for which there are no replacements native to the target platform is performed using the dynamic recompilation dynarec technique from one set of machine instructions to another. Compared to interpreting machine instructions, dynamic recompilation demonstrates 5 to 10 times higher performance. ShotStars 0.2 solves the problem of tracking the disappearance of stars for projects on GitHub. The standard capabilities of GitHub do not provide users with information on decreasing stars in a project and allow them to obtain information when new ones are added. The project is written in Python and licensed under GPL v3+. Developers of the Herd project announced they were ensuring the ability to build 71% of Debian archive packages in the Debian GNU Herd distribution, up from last year's 58%. Other GNU Herd achievements include the porting of the Mach kernel to the AArch64 architecture and the adoption of patches that allow GCC to be used to build GNU Herd programs for AArch64. The port does not yet provide all the desired functionality, but it can already be used to run simple applications. The GNU Mach kernel provides experimental support for symmetric multithreading. Problems with builds using GCC 14 have been resolved. Support for the Rustic compiler has been added, which allows you to build applications written in Rust for GNU Herd. Debian GNU Herd uses the GNU Herd kernel in a Debian base and remains the only actively developed Debian platform created on the basis of a kernel other than Linux. GNU Herd is a kernel which began development prior to the creation of the Linux kernel as a replacement for the Unix kernel and designed as a set of servers running on top of the GNU Mach microkernel and implementing various system services such as file systems, a network stack, and a file access control system. The GNU Mach microkernel provides an IPC mechanism used to organize the interaction of GNU Herd components and build a distributed multi-server architecture. Text editor development team Z announced implementation support for Linux platforms. Ready-made builds prepared for x86 64 and ARM64 architectures support most Linux distributions. The editor is notable for its ability to collaborate on code, a highly responsive interface, and window rasterization on the GPU. The project is being headed by Nathan Sobo with the participation of teams former editor developers of Atom, Electron Platform, and parsing libraries TreeSitter. The source code of the server part, which provides multi-user editing, open under the GPLv3 license, and the editor itself is licensed under GPLv3. To create the user interface, their own GPUI library is used, open under the Apache 2.0 license. The project code is written in Rust. Z, or Zed, if you will, combines a lightweight text editor and the functionality of modern integrated development environments in one product. Much attention is paid to the performance and responsiveness of the interface. According to the creators of the project, all editing actions should be performed instantly, and coding tasks should be solved in the most efficient way. The high performance of Z is achieved through the active use of multithreading, using all available CPU cores and the involvement of the GPU in the rendering process. CloneZilla Live 3.1.3 was just released. Designed for fast cloning of disks, only used blocks are copied. The tasks performed by the distribution are similar to the proprietary product Norton Ghost. The distribution is based on Debian and uses code from projects such as DRBL, Partition Image, NTFS Clone, Part Clone, and UDPcast. Loading from CD or DVD, USB flash, and network is possible. Nearly all file systems and VM products are supported. There is a mass cloning mode over the network, including traffic transmission in multicast mode, which allows you to simultaneously clone the source disk onto a large number of client machines. You can both clone from one disk to another and create backup copies by saving a disk image to a file. Cloning is possible at the level of entire disks or individual partitions. XIM 4.98 was released, to which accumulated corrections have been made and new features have been added. The project code is written in C and is distributed under GPLv2 Plus license. According to the June automated survey of about 400,000 mail servers, XIM's share is 59.06%, up from 55.93% a year ago, with only postfix being used on 34.68% of mail servers, providing much competition. FirewallD 2.2 is out, implemented in the form of a wrapper over the NF tables and IP tables packet filters. FirewallD runs as a background process that allows you to dynamically change packet filter rules via dbus without having to reload the packet filter rules or breaking established connections. The project is already used in many Linux distributions, including RHEL 7 Plus, Fedora 18 Plus, and SUSE/OpenSUSE 15 Plus. The FirewallD code is written in Python and licensed under GPLv2. Colin Percival announced changes in the process of generation and support of releases for FreeBSD. Starting with the 15 branch scheduled for the end of 2025, the maintenance time for major branches after the formation of their first release will be reduced from 5 to 4 years. At the same time, new major branches will be formed every 2 years. Interim releases will be developed as part of a fixed development cycle, implying the publication of new versions in one branch approximately every 6 months. Taking into account the simultaneous maintenance of 2 different major branches, a new intermediate release will be published once every 3 months, with the exception of the preparation of the first releases of new major branches where there will be a 6-month break in releases. It is noted that recent optimizations of interaction between teams responsible for generating releases and development have made it possible to reduce the process of preparing releases to 3 beta versions and 1 release candidate. Shortening the release preparation cycle will allow them to more quickly bring new features to users and reduce the burden of preparing each release. A common predictable development model will make it easier for users to plan for the transition to new releases, but if critical issues are identified, the developers reserve the right to delay the release until a fix is ready. Thunderbird 128 is out, community-driven and powered by Mozilla technology. Thunderbird 128 is built on the ESR release code-based Firefox 128 and is classified as a long-term support version, for which updates are released throughout the year. OBS Studio 30.2 is out, a package for streaming, compositing, and video recording. The code is written in C and C++ and distributed under GPLv2. Assemblies are formed for Linux as Flatpak, Windows, and Mac OS. The goal of developing OBS Studio was to create a portable version of the application Open Broadcaster service not tied to the Windows platform, supporting OpenGL and extensible through plugins. Another difference is the use of a modular architecture, which implies a separation of the interface and the core of the program. OBS supports transcoding of source streams, video captured during games, and streaming to PeerTube, Twitch, Facebook Gaming, YouTube, Dailymotion, Hitbox, and other services. To ensure high performance, you can use hardware acceleration mechanisms, for example NVENC, Intel QSV, and VAAPI. Support is provided for compositing with scene construction based on arbitrary video streams, data from web cameras, video capture cards, images, text, the contents of application windows, or the entire screen. During broadcasting, you can switch between several predefined scenes, for example switch views with an emphasis on screen content and webcam image. The program also provides tools for audio mixing, filtering using VST plugins, volume equalization, and noise reduction. Whonix 17.2 is available, aimed at providing guaranteed anonymity, security, and protection of private information. The distribution is based on Debian GNU Linux and uses Tor to ensure anonymity. The project is distributed under the GPL v3 license. Images of virtual machines in OVA format for VirtualBox have been prepared for downloading. The image can also be converted for use with the KVM hypervisor. A feature of Whonix is the division of the distribution into two separately launched components: Whonix Gateway, a network gateway for anonymous communications, and Whonix Workstation with a desktop. Both components are shipped within the same boot image. Access to the network from the Whonix Workstation environment is made only through the Whonix Gateway, which isolates the working environment from direct interaction with the outside world and allows the use of only fictitious network addresses. This approach allows you to protect the user from leaking the real IP address in the event of a web browser being hacked, and even when exploiting a vulnerability that gives the attacker root access to the system. Actual IP and DNS parameters are hidden behind a network gateway powered by Whonix Gateway, which routes traffic only through Tor. It should be taken into account that Whonix components are designed to run in the form of guest systems in order to rule out the possibility of exploiting critical zero-day vulnerabilities in virtualization platforms. It is not recommended to run Whonix Workstation on the same computer as Whonix Gateway. Whonix Workstation provides the XFCE user environment by default. The package includes programs such as VLC, Tor Browser, Thunderbird plus TorBirdie, Pigeon, etc. Whonix Gateway includes a set of server applications including Apache HTTPD, Nginx, and IRC servers, which can be used for Tor hidden services. You can forward tunnels over Tor for Freenet, I2P, John Donham, SSH, and VPN. If desired, the user can make do with only Whonix Gateway and connect his usual systems through it, including Windows, which makes it possible to provide anonymous access to workstations already in use. Qubes 4.2.2 is available, which implements the idea of using a hypervisor to strictly isolate applications and OS components. For normal operation, they recommend a system with 16 gigs of RAM and a 64-bit Intel or AMD CPU with support for VTX, with EPT/AMD-V with RVI, and VT-D/AMD IOMMU technologies, and an Intel GPU. NVIDIA and AMD GPUs are not well tested. Applications in Qubes are divided into classes depending on the importance of the data being processed and the tasks running. Each class of applications, as well as system services, run in separate virtual machines using the Xen hypervisor. At the same time, these applications are available within the same desktop and are highlighted for clarity with different window border colors. Each environment has read access to the base root file system and local storage, which does not overlap with the storage of other environments. A special service is used to organize application interaction. Fedora and Debian can be used as a basis for creating virtual environments. Templates for Ubuntu, Gentoo, and Arch Linux are also supported by the community. You can organize access to applications in a Windows virtual machine, as well as create Whonix-based virtual machines to provide anonymous access via Tor. The user shell is built on top of XFCE. When a user launches an application from the menu, the application starts in a specific virtual machine. The content of virtual environments is determined by a set of templates. You've been listening to Full Circle Weekly News. For more details, see the next issue of the magazine at fullcirclemagazine.org or check the links in the show notes. You can contact me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'll see you next week.